finally, a source of raw, real, and honest information on healthcare issues that matter most. Welcome to BS Free MD. From the latest medical information to how to stay sane as a doctor or a patient, no subject is taboo, no BS is allowed. Now, let's welcome your hosts, Doctors May and Tim Hindmarsh.
All right, everybody, welcome back again to another episode of BS Free MD with your hosts, Doctors Tim and May Hindmarsh, where we like to peel back the Band-Aid. Actually, I like to rip it off and uncover what's really going on beneath all the mandatory health directives, dig into the quirky side of medicine and healthcare, and actually talk about some fun, amazing things as well. And today we have got a guest who's lived a life that's as thrilling as a Hollywood blockbuster movie. Chris Cooksey is an ex-motocross racer who's transitioned. I changed that word transition in my head. I'm thinking, I can't say that word anymore.
They've destroyed it.
I just can't
just
use
like
the
the
word.
rainbow.
Chris
destroyed.
Has moved on into journalism, where he's now not just covering stories, but uncovering truths. And if that wasn't enough, he's also a real estate agent. Get out of town. So we're thrilled to have him here today with us to dive into all kinds of things. But I know Tim wants to get into his experience with ketamine and his recovery from TBI and more. So we'll see how much time we have to get into so much detail with Chris. I can hardly wait. Happy to have you on the show. Let's welcome Chris to the studio with us.
How are you guys doing?
Do you
Finally,
like?
I'm glad.
Oh.
So Chris and I met almost a year ago at a Barrett Jackson auction. He was one of the vendors. And I started talking about a podcast and that we had interviewed Peter McCullough and Harvey Risch and all that. And he's like, really? I love those guys. They're like my heroes. And we like instantly bonded and have been kind of communicating through Instagram DMs. I drop in his DMs every once in a while, May. And he's got a great story from coming from motocross and TBI. I get accused of TMI sometimes, but not TBI, traumatic brain injury, and then the recovery through some really interesting therapies that are actually becoming more conventional, which I'm really glad to hear. So, Chris, why don't you just start off, give us a little talk about when you started in racing and where that led, and then we'll get into a little bit of your injuries and recovery.
So I started racing back in the day when we didn't really know much about concussions. We thought, okay, you hit your head, as long as you're not throwing up or bleeding out the ear, we're going to run it next week. No big deal. But the problem is nowadays, like they take you and you X-ray or CT scan, and if there's no brain bleed, they send you home and you're considered okay. What they don't consider is the long-term effects of these. And I don't know how much, you guys are doctors, I don't think they've even scratched the surface when it comes to brain health. So what I did is I was like, listen, I've lost a bunch of friends to suicide, and that can't be a coincidence that we all raced dirt bikes. We all had head injuries. So I wanted to look for some options, because you can't just say, hey, that's it. We're all going to just have depression and die. That's just not something I was willing to accept. So what I did is I researched it. I found TMS therapy, transcranial magnetic stimulation. I found with Dr. Jonathan Edwards, he does ketamine therapy, and it treats a lot of the things. That kind of helps rewire your brain so that you can kind of, it just, reopens those pathways. I just figured there had to be some other options. So I have tested these, and, it helps. A lot of the things that people ignore about head injuries are the impulse control or the anger and the emotional disorders that they create. You get that head injury when you're 15, and it creates some sort of emotional issue at 20 or at age 40. So there's a lot of different aspects to it, but I just didn't want to live with it.
So can you actually take us back a little bit into your riding career? And was there a pivotal event that happened, or was it just a series of what you thought was minor head injuries that happened, and then something kind of made you wake up to the fact that you were suffering? So yeah, tell us a little bit more in detail what happened, how you figured out what was going on.
Well, pretty much everybody that races motocross gets concussions. We've all had where we're knocked out, your ears ring. we didn't consider that a concussion unless, like I said, you had brain bleed, you vomited, or you couldn't remember anything for a couple days. But then as I found out more about football players, CTE, I was like, man, you know what? Motocross racers get a lot of concussions, and I don't want to just accept what's going on. But I haven't had one particular major one that really sticks out. I had probably 2 or 3 where my memory was messed up for a couple days. So those ones kind of count. But I've had a lot of the smaller ones where you just kind of feel crappy for a couple days.
So tell us when, your career ended in motocross. Were you having any kind of things happening with your memory, your mental health, emotions? Like how, I don't know, do you guys talk about how old they are? How old were you when you finished racing, and what was going on?
Well, I raced pretty much my whole life. Unfortunately, I never got to a super high level, but I mean, I got to the pro level, but I wasn't one of the top guys. And that's the thing, is that when people have these issues, they focus on just the top guys because they get all the attention. But there's lots of other people that have the same injuries that never reached that level. But I've raced and rode up into my early 40s. I just stopped riding recently, but I stopped racing competitively and trying to do stuff around the age of 35. My ex-wife at the time, she was very, paid attention to medical stuff, emotional disorders. She's like, listen, you're suffering from TBIs. I'm like, what do you mean? And, as I explained to her about my other friends, I've had, I have to double check. I've got a list going. It's like 7 or 8 friends I grew up racing with have committed suicide. I don't know how many people have that kind of an odds. So there has to be something going on. And, once I saw that, and I was like, listen, and I heard a UFC fighter, Kat Zingano, she was on the Joe Rogan talking about TMS. So I seeked out a TMS therapy, and I just kind of made it my goal to not just surrender to these issues and, like I said, not just take a pill. There's got to be other ways, and that's why I'm kind of seeking out these other options, because I don't want to have these issues. And a lot of it, you got to be accountable for your own actions. And I feel like football players a lot of times are like, oh, it's just a dirtbag. Well, whatever your personality is, when you have these, these brain injuries and stuff like that, it tends to magnify those problems. So if you're kind of a violent person, I think with you add head injuries into it, you become a really violent person.
So, okay, you were still racing then when, did you say ex-wife? I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I kind of confronted you about some of this stuff. Yeah. Ooh. And so, yeah, did you start kind of just Googling people to go to and see for therapy, or preemptively? Yeah, what happened?
I was frustrated. I went to therapists because, I had a specific friend who had killed himself, and it was really alarming. I'm like, I don't want to go down this road. What is causing all these people to do this? And when I did that, all these therapists, like you said, they want to put you on different drugs. I'm like, I don't want to take drugs. I don't want to take something that's going to cause this or do that. Like, there's got to be more. And like I said, my friend, Dr. Jonathan Edwards, you guys should have him on. He is a genius, but he does the ketamine therapy, and it's very similar to the brain in what TMS does, is where it kind of reopens those pathways. And the way he described it is, when you have a concussion, it's like taking a river and running it dry. Once it cuts a different direction, it never goes back. And with TMS and ketamine therapy done the right way, it kind of flushes it. It's like setting a flood down it so you can reopen those pathways. You still have to do the work. You still have to do therapy. You still have to be a good person, but it just gives you the mental capacity to make that. It just helps it. It makes it more effective.
What were you experiencing? Like, were you depressed? Were you, getting drunk on the weekends and getting in bar fights? Like, what exactly was going on?
I was getting a little bit more angry, and I couldn't feel it all. Like, it was weird. You know how you go to the ocean and you just get this like sensation from the air? It just triggers you. You just feel good, right? I would do stuff that used to make me feel really good. Nothing. It just didn't trigger me. My fears didn't trigger as much. I would go, I like to rappel. I would go rappelling, and I'm scared of heights, but I like to do stuff to challenge myself. And I wasn't getting scared. And it was funny. The first time I went rappelling after doing TMS therapy, I was like, dear Lord, I'm so scared. Holy crap. Like it reopened and let me feel things that I just wasn't feeling. It's almost like my brain was becoming numb.
That's really interesting. I have not heard that side of it. I've heard, the chronic headaches. I read Dale Jr.'s biography where he basically just went through his concussion protocol and how they treated him. And that was a fascinating book, and how many hits those guys take. Like, motorsports is brutality on your head, and we don't really think of it. But, guys are taking, 100 G fraction of a second hits. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. So did you get on the traditional stuff that we would give? May and I would have done this thousands of times, where you give somebody an SSRI, you just blunt them. It just blunts all of your emotions. You blunts your sexual response, blunts everything. But yeah, hey, there you go. Have a nice life. Did you go down that road at all?
I did. And you want to hear something ridiculous? I had to actually work out a deal with the TMS therapy because it's pretty expensive. I think it's like $10,000, but you don't have to go on SSRIs. But the problem is the insurance won't pay for it unless you've tried 2 or 3 different SSRIs and failed before they'll pay for something that actually cures it, where you don't have to take anything. It's ridiculous. I don't understand. Well, I do understand it. It's money. They want to have a customer for life. But I just don't understand why it's so good for so many people. And if you can reopen and fix stuff, why treat it when you can fix it? I don't get that.
Well, it is customers for life. And I mean, try getting off SSRIs. I mean, I've been off now. Like, I finally drank the righteous Kool-Aid and was red pilled. And, I had been on them before. I've been off for 8 years plus. It took me at least 6 months, if not longer, to have 0 side effects. And I wasn't very sick. I mean, I was, you're treating life, and, then you think of people that actually have brain damage, and this is the standard treatment. People get, traumatic brain injury and PTSD from, military involvement, and we put them on drugs that basically make it so that you can never get better. That's really what it does. It makes it so you can never get better.
Seriously, it is crazy too. And, they put me on Paxil. I still take a small dose because I haven't been able to get completely off it. You said the side effects are horrible. And I'm like, I'm kind of okay just taking a small dose. But they wanted to put me on a bunch more. And I'm like, no, I won't do it. I will not. You already got me on this one. I'm not going on it anymore. And it's frustrating. And that's why I have researched this other stuff. And like I said, I feel like there's more options out there. If they just, our whole medical system in general drives me crazy in the sense of it's so money generated. And you guys are doctors and you guys are some of the good ones, but not all of them are like that. A lot of them, I think they get more information from the stupid pharmaceutical reps than they do from actual medical books.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say yes. And I would say guilty as charged in the past a few times with stuff. It's like, I don't have time to look all this up. Drug rep comes by, hands you a couple of pamphlets. I'm like, oh, this looks good. Do you like this I like them as a person. You trust them. Like, this is probably legit info. One and done. I'll give it a try.
You'll be amazed how quickly your education goes to 0 when a smoking hot blonde brings you pizza.
Well, speak for yourself.
Well,
they know that. It's true.
Yeah, here's the thing. I'm not, and I honestly think there's, drug reps are made out to be the devil. I don't know that these people selling the drugs know that they're bad. They probably genuinely believe they're doing the right thing, but they're probably getting the wrong information from these fake trials like how Fauci does. So as soon as the trial goes opposite, they shut it off and all the little, I didn't realize that it was so easy to kind of game the system.
Well, we'll get to that soon.
Yeah, May's going to stop me, but where we learned that one was from Harvey Risch about how when you control the randomized controlled trials, you can kind of make them say whatever you want. And then there's a bunch of mathematical, fuckery that goes on that, almost 0 physicians, unless they were really into that, has any clue about. And my son knows way more about p-values because he's an engineer. So he's a math person. We're just like, yep, well, it said it was good. The abstract was good. And it's right next to the advertisement for the woohoo, and away we go. So, I mean, that's generally how it works because we're clinicians. We're not really scientists. And you want to see a doctor. You want somebody that like tests hypotheses and sees patients and has compassion and isn't just a lab guy. But, it's become very corrupted, to say the least. That said, May, go ahead.
Oh, and I feel bad for you guys as doctors too, because your patients are lined up. You're one after. When are you supposed to re-educate? It's the way the system's set up. I don't know how you would fix that. You guys might be able to help me with that one.
Well,
you don't get to do Netflix and chilled. You just have to read after work. I mean, yeah. But
you do have to. But I don't see where I came from. This is, I was the dipshit on the NASCAR bus that got in a discussion with a guy from Ontario, Canada, and he asked about naturopaths, and I said I think they're great for treating people that aren't sick, which I still kind of believe, but I have lots of naturopath friends. I've seen naturopaths. I think that there's tons of stuff that the non-allopathic physicians have to offer. I think it opens up the medical model. I think it opens up people's minds, and it's really good. But, it started this guy was just all freaking out at me for the next 15 minutes. And I've gone from that place to questioning absolutely everything, because I sat on all these boards of directors. I sat on pharmacy and therapeutics committees, for insurance companies. And I started looking at this and I'm like, why are we doing this? It doesn't make any sense. Well, it's because the federal government tells us we have to do it. I'm like, well, why are we covering these medications? They don't work. Well, because it's in a protected class. And I started realizing that it was all this gigantic money machine where pharma donates to, the senators, and then they pass the laws, which then goes back into pharma and back into the universities. And it's a gigantic money grinder.
Oh, yeah, it's disgusting. And I don't know exactly how you fix it. I mean, aren't we the only country that allows pharmaceutical companies to run advertisements promoting their drugs?
New Zealand does as well.
Yeah, with more restrictions. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the stuff that we have is completely off the chain. And that's what Bobby Kennedy's like. The first day, I'm signing an executive order. That's done. You can't do that anymore. That would change the country massively.
I have to throw this in there before we ask him more about his ketamine experience. But I was doing a telehealth with my doctor yesterday, and this is how bad it was. I had to fill in, check in for the online experience, and it's through a portal that's one of these massive companies. And then I put in my birth date and my current pharmacy, and then it asked me to watch a video about one of the, as Tim calls it, FU-upamabs kind of drugs, one of those immune modulating ones. And I hit no thanks. Then it takes me to another one. 5 of these things pop up and keep going. And I can't get into the chat window. So I called their office. I'm like, what is going on? Like, all I'm getting is commercials for autoimmune drugs. I want to just do a telehealth. And they had to bypass it. So that's advertising everywhere, isn't it? No, you're good.
Yeah, so
I was just gonna. So it's just. So it's everywhere.
Well, I know exactly how that worked. That's a small private practice, and if they sign up with ads, then they get it for free.
Yeah.
So the doctor doesn't want to pay for the telehealth, so they let Big Pharma pay for the telehealth, and then you get Big Pharma directly portaled from your physician, so you assume your physician agrees with that. I mean, you want to talk about...
Yeah, they're like, oh, that's going on, and we didn't know that. Sorry, let's see if we can fix it.
You're responsible for it. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, you're a doctor, you still have responsibility. It's still my license. If I don't understand and I just give everyone a freaking statin and birth control pills and SSRIs and God knows what, that's still on me. And so we have to suck it up and understand that there's more out there than just what the pharma companies say.
But don't you guys believe in science? I'm sorry, that's the stupidest statement I hear people say. Do I believe in science? Yeah, I also believe I can manipulate science. Science is only as good as its last test. It changes, it updates. I get so frustrated when these knuckleheads say, oh yeah, I believe in science. Ugh.
I honestly, I laugh at it because I go right back to I believe in science and biology and DNA and genetics with and Y chromosomes and male and female and none of this other nonsense. So yes, that's the science. Anyway,
Wait,
I
there's
want
only
you
two.
to
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
I was going to say, I want to kind of reel back a little bit because I want to finish off the part about your experience with the brain injury before we really get more into what's happening in this world with where you're at in your career too. But what was it like? Can you tell us a little bit about your ketamine experience? Because a lot of people talk about it, but nobody really talks about the experience of having ketamine and what it's like. So I was wondering if you could share that.
So ketamine's a weird one. A lot of people use that as a party drug, and I think that is scary as all hell. I don't like it. But with the use of with Dr. Edwards, what he explained is it's essentially the same thing as like TMS therapy. I did it, and it kind of reopened. But it's not, like I said, it's not a magic bullet. It's something that just kind of reopens your brain so that you can kind of think a little differently. And after we did that, he had me listening to a bunch of self-help podcasts, a lot of Jordan Peterson, and some stuff to kind of almost reprogram what has been lost. And while it's a little bit scary, it also was something that was it was really unique in the sense I felt like I got more out of the TMS therapy, but I think if somebody doesn't want to spend a gigantic amount of money or can't put in the time to do TMS therapy, I do believe the ketamine done properly, and I say properly because the way it was described to me is it reopens those, and if you come right back out and go right back to the same bad negative habits, you'll rewire it negatively.
So can you walk us through just like, say, a typical day getting a ketamine session? Now our daughter's worked in a clinic, and I've heard horrible things about people getting IVs being put in padded rooms and locked up for a couple of hours till they walk out, to other experiences. So tell us what you're like, for those that haven't heard, what it was like. So you walk into the clinic and what happens?
So this was with Dr. Jonathan Edwards. We went in, we talked about some stuff, got into the right mindset. Once, he felt like I was in the right mindset and ready to do this, he put the IV in, and then he stayed there the entire time right next to me just in case. And what I did is I put headphones on and just tuned everything out. It's like a meditated session on steroids. You really can go kind of translucent. It was weird. It was only about an hour or hour and a half. It felt like 2 weeks, but it was weird how I kind of almost got to see myself from a third person. And when I came out, it's weird, but it just, I don't know. I don't even know. It's so hard to describe because you almost leave this consciousness and you almost understand consciousness on a different level. And I don't know that everyone feels that, but that's how I felt. And it just made me think a little bit. And then I got a little bit more, like I said, I made sure for the next 2 weeks or so to make sure to stay on that positive stuff and do my own personal therapy, because after you open it up like that, you're really susceptible to new ideas.
So did you come out of there pretty much with the same experience each session, or was there ever a time where it was very negative and scary? We've heard people talk about using ketamine therapy, almost having experiences similar to their near-death experiences. Did you have anything like that, or anything really negative happen?
Well, see, I was doing pretty good. I just wanted to do the ketamine therapy because I wanted to promote it to, a lot of the motocrossers that follow my show. I only did one session. So I don't know. My session was good. Speaking with Dr. Edwards, he has only had a couple where they had really bad sessions, and they had serious PTSD and, with addressing some issues with, child molestation and stuff like that, that really, it really takes your repressed thoughts and kind of brings them to the surface where you can deal with them, is kind of what he described to me. But he said, yeah, there are a couple, but he said the second treatment with that same person was much better, and just they had a real breakthrough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I heard a guy on Sean Ryan's show who was really into the psychedelic therapy, and he talked about how his mentor was the funeral pyre for an emotion is in its expression. So when you finally are able to fully experience whatever that emotion is, whether it's, loss from PTSD, like happens to a lot of these, military guys or whatever, then it goes away. Then it's gone. And what we do in most psychotherapy in allopathic medicine is exactly the opposite. We try to make it so that you just don't feel it at all, which to me, like intuitively, sounds insane, because we're feeling human beings that need to have a full palette of emotion to be, full people. And we're just dumbing this stuff. I mean, you might as well just give everyone Jack Daniels at that point. I mean,
Yeah.
At least you're going to have a good time for a little while.
Yeah, and the way it was described to me is like, what you're talking about, that type of medicine. It's like just pulling a rug over trash again and again. It's still there, and it's eventually going to come out one way or the other.
No, that's exactly. And I, when we had Roger McFillin on our show, and I said, basically, we hear all this screaming about a mental health crisis, and it's basically like we have all these people hitting themselves on the head with hammers, and then the pharmaceutical industry is just making helmets. So we just need more helmets. No, you need to, take the hammers out of people's hands. I mean, that's really the issue. And through diet, through glyphosate, through, a vaccine for every freaking fart and whatever, all of this stuff where, there's just all this toxic environment that people have, and no one wants to talk about that. We'll just send out more helmets. There you go. That's the solution.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any one solution. I think you need to be healthy, live healthy, and when you do those types of things, you start to turn positive. And I think that's a lot of the mental health crisis. People are stuck on their phones. And I have a theory on phones and in chat rooms and stuff is we all go out and we're somewhat polite to each other, right? But then when we get online, we all have a positive and a negative. That's where everybody dumps their negative. So if you're stuck in that all day long, it's going to put you in a bad place.
Yeah, no kidding. So how are you, like, you're obviously doing quite well now. I mean, you're a super busy guy. You have you create tons of digital content. You go to a lot of races, you sell houses. So where have you been since the last treatment, and kind of where's where are you at? I hate saying this, but where are you at in this journey now?
So the way I describe mental health is nobody's ever going to fix it. You're not going to cure it. It's just like exercising. If I run, I get better and better and better. And if I stop running, like jogging, then I get out of shape. If you stop working on your mental health, you will get depressed. You will get anxious. You will have the same problems. And, there's good days, there's bad days, but it's all about, I don't know if you guys listen to Andy Frisella, Real AF. I always try and, mix in some positive stuff as far as how to win and how to kind of just do things. And it's about, staying on top of my mental health as much as I do my physical health.
Well, that's a really good point, because so much of the time people are everybody's emphasizing the physical, the working out, mental health's important, de-stress, but usually that morphs into the physical stuff by going to the gym, working out, and focusing on body and longevity and all this stuff now on hacking, biohacking, but it really doesn't focus on what to do to stay mentally healthy. And I think we really need to talk about that a whole lot more, about what do you do to stay mentally healthy. Because I think if you're physically unable, like you literally stuck in a wheelchair, or those people, I mean, that's not an option. So mental health is almost more important than anything, really. So I really like that point. Yeah.
And the biggest thing, like I said, is it's not that you necessarily and people want this pill. Oh, I just want to be better forever. You'll never be better forever. It's something you constantly work on. You're never fixed. It's a daily thing that you work on.
Yeah, I'm realizing that I'm never going to be fixed. I'm struggling through my own stuff, and you're right. It's ups and downs, and life is that way, and it's going to be with us till we're in the next world. As I say, I'm passing through. What did you say?
Yeah.
Played that Larry Norman song for me last night. I'm just passing through.
I'm just visiting this planet.
Yeah. Can you tell us then? Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I was just saying, there wouldn't be ups if there weren't downs. It would all just be flat. Nobody wants flat.
No, exactly.
No, that's exactly right.
So, trying to wrap up the motocross career, what was there any big sort of momentous things that happened in that your career, even though you say you weren't in the top, but anything that really stood out to you is really impacting your life now going forward as far as how you approach life, your work, relationships, and what you kind of took from your motocross experience now into this part of your life?
Well, motocross, I didn't make it nearly as far as I wanted. I have a lot of reasons why I think that. Some are injuries, some are, it's a sport where you have to have the right equipment, the right amount of money. But I take what I did and I tried really hard and I learned every little thing I possibly could, but it didn't work. And, I learned from that and say, okay, well, if you just take that, if you can take, and not everybody is going to be a superstar athlete, but what you can learn from the athletics is how to get better, how to improve, how to not quit, how to understand. It teaches you to deal with winning, because sometimes you win, more times you lose. And, you can take your losses and you can let them destroy you, or you can build off of them. And that's the biggest thing I've ever got from my racing. Not any results or anything like that. Because like I said, my results were, I did okay. I had my moments, but I was not a superstar. But I learned a lot, and the skills that I learned helped me move on. And I was smart enough to recognize I wasn't going to be a superstar in time to go to college and really expand my horizons. I was working at a shop and I was racing pro locally, and another pro came in. I was like 22, 23. He was 30, smoking pot every day, living in his parents' basement. And I remember looking at him and going, damn, that's my future. I got to do something else. So I sold my bikes and just went to college for, a little while.
Wow. It makes me think of, I wonder if Tim's thinking the same thing I am, but our son at a young age was junior high, and he's playing junior high football, and he quickly realizes he's getting injured out there because he's one of the smallest kids. And, junior high, when all of a sudden, even the guys get these growth spurts, and you got this almost 6 feet monsters, and he's the small kid, and he's like, I'm getting hurt. And he did the math back then on the odds of making it into the NFL. And then he did it for hockey because he was into that. And, basketball, he's like, wow, all these kids, this is the number of kids, in club sports playing or whatever. And this is how many make it. I'll have fun, but, the odds aren't there. So most people are freakish like our son is, and he'd hate me talking about him, but good for you for figuring that out, because some people just push and push, or they have that influence from their family or outside forces. And then, yeah, you're right. You get to that point and you feel like, wow, was it worth it?
And I started racing again after I got out of college, but I knew the dream was over, but I just really, really enjoyed it. I still got to do it at a high level. But I recognized, and it's hard because that same belief that makes people great, when everyone doubts them and says, oh, you can't do it, that's the same belief that can wreck you. And it's just, I don't know how you tell somebody it's time to quit. I mean, you see boxers and UFC fighters, they always hang on too long, but that same drive that got them when nobody probably thought they would get there, that same thing. So I don't know, it's a tough balance, but it's something people have to be honest with themselves about.
No, that's a good point. I was just thinking too, you're right, to get to the Olympic level or the gold cup or whatever it is level, you have to have that commitment and drive to push through. But, realism is important too. And what do you think it was more freeing for you? Like, it sounds like it once you realize that I'm not going to probably make it to the top now, I'm just free to really enjoy it for what it is, even at that moment.
It was tough, and I think I struggled a lot because nobody wants to quit anything. Nobody wants to just say, oh, I'm never going to be that good. And it did leave a hole for a long time. And I think that's why I raced so much after college, as I was trying to fill that. And like I said, that was something that part of my therapy was going through, and how to accept that. And I think a lot of the motocross racers that I know that were on levels like me that never really got there, it's this weird empty feeling like you failed. And that's part of the depression. I think you mix that in with the head injuries and just kind of being, people that race motorcycles are a little bit of a risk taking in general, but you add the frustration of not getting there and this empty hole. it's kind of a cocktail, and but that's something you have to, like I said, just have to deal with it at some point.
Good point, because there is a lot of personality types. You're right about the high sensation. Wouldn't you call motocross racing high sensation?
Oh no, totally.
It's sport plus the injuries plus the drive to want to get to a certain level. You're right.
No, I mean it's fascinating because I look back at my years of skydiving and how many friends I lost skydiving, and they don't die skydiving. They die doing something else. They fall off a street bike that they should have never ridden because they'd never ridden one before. But of course, they know how to do one high risk sport, so they know how to do all of them. Several suicides. One guy smoked himself to death and ended up with lung cancer. And I mean, it's just every single thing is all high sensation seeking. There's no question. I don't think there's a single person I met at a drop zone that didn't have multiple tattoos and a motorcycle. Like it just boop, they all go together.
Yeah. I mean, they're those type of behaviors. And I say, those are some of the behaviors that you also have to kind of pay attention to. And you take those kind of behaviors who are already susceptible to that type of problem, mix in head injuries at a younger age. And yeah, it's something to look at. Okay.
So I'm not very big in the motocross scene other than following what our son did and what I got roped into riding when we had our property, etc. But is there much going on now? Because we haven't been watching it on TV lately, but you're at the events. Is there much going on in the motocross world now to really be aware of the traumatic brain injury and promote stepping in and being proactive and getting things done? Or is it still kind of every man for himself?
It is absolutely zero. They still try and hide it as much as possible. Oh. The organization puts these guys into so-called concussion protocol. All that really means is they sat out and they admitted they had a head injury. The concussion protocol, if any of these teams want their rider to ride, I've seen guys as recently as this year being knocked out in practice and racing later in that day. It's actually kind of disgusting, and I take a lot of heat because I point it out. And, people call me soft or whatever. I'm like, no, I just don't think they understand, being a hero right then will cost them later on in life. And quite often you'll see that same guy that hit his head in practice make a bigger mistake later on and possibly hurt somebody else. It's a really disgusting culture that I'm working hard to change.
No, that is really inspiring. I just watched the ESPN Jackie Stewart documentary from several, I don't know, it was probably 4 or 5 years ago. It was absolutely inspiring.
Jackie Stewart?
Jackie Stewart.
Okay.
That guy did more to save people's lives in F1 than anybody. And they called him soft. And I'm like, there was a period of time when he was racing in the late 60s where it was 3 months in a row, because it was 3 races in a row had a fatality.
Wow.
3 races in a row. So in a month, they killed 3 or 4 guys. And he's like, we got to get the gasoline out of the tanks. We got to, use all of these different things, the roll bar technology, the fire is what killed all those guys. They need, once they went to methanol, it changed the world. And, runoffs and not having guardrails and all of this stuff. And they're like, he's soft. And it's like, no, he's the best guy in the world. And he's sick of seeing all of his friends die. And then you watch this story, and the guy won 3 world championships and could not read or write because he was so profoundly dyslexic. What an absolute hero. And he's still married to his high school sweetheart 64 years later. There's not many guys that pull that one off.
And the thing that I lobby for too is to take it out of the riders' or drivers' hands. What they're doing is dangerous, and they almost have to have this willful ignorance of the situation. We need to have people around them who understand. I can't tell you how many times I've seen riders get knocked out and then they ask them, are you okay? Of course they're going to say they're okay. They always do. Plus, if you've ever been knocked out, you don't know you were out. How many UFC fighters are unconscious and they wake up, wrestle the ref and ask them why they stopped it until they show them the video of them laying there unconscious. It has to be out of the rider's hands, and they need people with a little bit of courage to step in and sit them down when they don't want to sit down.
Well, it's what they did in the NFL. The jury's still out on how effective that is. but that concussion tent it's definitely changed the sport. I mean, there's the debate on, are we going to end up with flag football at some point? But I the other side of that coin is guys are fitter and faster and tougher than they've ever been. And my solution to the NFL is just not wear helmets. Then they won't use their head as a weapon anymore.
Yeah. I think Mike Ditka always said, take the face mask off and they won't ram their head.
Yep. No, it's true. I mean, as soon as they had face shields in hockey, the sticks went up in the air. I mean, it was like instantaneous, because it was like, now I have a weapon and I can't hurt anybody with it. Well, yeah, you can.
Wow.
So,
I'm surprised, sadly, at what's not going on there, and that it's still medieval times. Wow.
It really is behind, and I kind of expose some of this stuff so much so that I'm kind of the bad guy in the media for motocross. The main organization will not give me a press pass anymore because I don't follow their narratives. So they can kiss my ass.
No, good for you.
Yeah.
Because as RFK Jr. says, the censors are never on the good side. They're always the baddies.
Well, and that's my point. I'm like, if it's so bad that you don't want me talking about it, maybe you shouldn't do it.
Yeah,
it's good point. Good point.
That's just crazy. So how did you, let's shift gears here just a little bit. And how did you go from,
shift gears?
Huh?
I'm just laughing.
Yeah.
Shift gears.
Yeah. Pun intended. How did you go from, you've been really have a great following as far as your Cooksey Media with riding and motocross and now UFC. How did you get into the holy crap, what happened to us in the last 4 years with all the mandates and what nonsense?
I look around and I cannot believe what I'm seeing. I never thought I'd live in a world like this. And you hear, it used to be back in the day, it was some guy in a trailer that had these theories. But then when you see what they've done to the world, I feel it's a responsibility for anyone. And that whole, it's good to be the silent majority or it's strong. Screw that. It takes courage to speak up. And these people won't do it if you can call them out on it and hold them accountable. But I just feel like it's my duty. I don't, as an American, as somebody who cares about people in general, I just don't want this happening on my watch. And I'm going to do whatever I can to speak up about this crap.
Well, and that's kind of where May and I landed. What totally red pilled us is after the vaccine came out, it would have been about March or April in there of 2021. We're both working in urgent care in Eugene, Oregon at that time. And we're just seeing all of these people come in with all the stuff we'd never seen before. Pot syndrome, May had a myocarditis. We're like, what the hell is this? And it, you didn't have to be a genius to figure out, well, what was the only thing that changed in the last 4 months? Well, it was one thing. And then all of a sudden there's all these side effects. I mean, people would come in, it had a name. It was Moderna arm. Their arm would be swollen for 3 or 4 months. And it's like, it's clearly the vaccine because you have this local inflammatory response for months. And we talked to our colleagues and it's just like, well, no, it can't be that. What do you mean it can't be that? How can it be anything else? So we just finally said, okay, whatever. Do whatever you want to us. We got a podcast or whatever, and we're just going to keep blabbing our brains out because this is just so obviously ridiculous.
Well, and if it wasn't created in a lab, as with all the what they call that the testing they do, where they make a virus stronger, with all the gain of function. I mean, if it was just a natural virus and they tried to come out with a vaccine, good-hearted, like most people think that it would be, it'd be fine, But when they come out with a vaccine in record time, I would come out and say, hey, we have a vaccine. We think it's going to work, but we're not sure. Use it at your own risk. Yeah, that's fine. No problem. But to try and mandate it and guilt everybody the way they did. So I didn't take the vaccine. And then I got COVID really bad in September 21. And when I was in the hospital and I told them I didn't have the vaccine, they hardly wanted to treat me. It was like, oh, you idiot. And then they just like walk away. They had antibodies. They wouldn't give them to me because they said I didn't get the vaccine. True story.
What? That
That's
makes
what they
no
said.
sense.
They said, you're too
because
young. And you didn't get the vaccine, so you don't get them. You don't qualify.
Because we treated tons of people. We had this little private clinic that one of my residents started, and I worked there for a couple of years. And we treated about 1,000 people with monoclonal antibodies. We had people coming we had somebody come from Vegas because we would actually see them and treat them the same day. And we did it as an outpatient, and like we didn't care.
The whole qualify. I get you're young and healthy. Maybe we want to save it for the more frail, some child that has cancer on chemo, whatever. But because you didn't get vaccinated, therefore you can't have the monoclonal. It makes no sense. It's like the opposite way of thinking. It would be like, well, you should be the first person to get monoclonal antibodies because you haven't had any kind of crap put in your body to prevent it.
I was on death's doorstep. My organs were starting to shut down. And a girl came in with the sniffles who said she had got the vaccine. And, we were probably 6 to 8 feet away in the lobby because that's where they were treating us because it was so crowded. And I asked her, are you getting the antibodies? She said, yep. What? How? She had to have been 25. I couldn't believe it. I was just shocked.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd like to tell you I've not heard this before, but I have.
Yeah. Okay.
And were you admitted to the hospital? Did they admit you, or
instead they gave me what's that stuff Bill Gates had? His medicine, the really nasty stuff.
Not remdesivir.
Yes, they gave me remdesivir. Keep in mind, at this point, I was just one step away from the ventilator, which I told them I will not go on a ventilator, period. They said, this is, they gave me remdesivir. They called it the COVID cocktail. And I had heart issues and all sorts of issues for like a year. And I think it was the remdesivir.
You think correctly, I would say.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's almost impossible to prove at this stage of the game, but.
Oh, they would say it was from your COVID.
Oh, it's just, everything's from COVID. Yeah. It's just all COVID. So,
my resting heart rate. Yeah. My resting heart rate prior to going in the hospital was average about 50. For the next 4 or 5 months, my resting heart rate was like 90. Wow. It was crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
Not fun.
Yeah, no, that you definitely had a lot of damage to your heart.
Well, thank God you were young and healthy. I
yes.
mean, that's because, this was
How long were you in the hospital for?
3 days, and 3 days. 3 days overall, and then I got to where I could be dismissed. But I still was super sick when I got home.
Oh yeah, you would be.
Wow, I'm thinking, good. I'm glad you got out of there when you did.
Yeah,
anyway.
remdesivir.
I was good enough to walk, and I got enough IVs. I'm like, I gotta get out of here.
Yeah, run death is near is the other name for that.
Yes, that's the
the
nickname.
Yeah, not good stuff.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, they gave it to me, and I think it caused a lot of problems, and I'm really, really, really mad about it. But that stuff, I think they billed my insurance like $800 or some ridiculous amount when they could have just given me antibodies. Instead, they gave me that garbage. And I'm not gonna lie. If I sound bitter, I am.
Yeah, the monoclonal antibodies were really good. I mean, you needed to give them fairly early, but then it was super funny because they'd come out with a new monoclonal antibody as the variants changed, and then they would pull the other ones off of emergency use, so you couldn't use them, which makes sense, right? Like if it's not going to be as effective. But then what they would eventually, they just said none of them work anymore because we can't keep up with the variants or whatever. And I'm like, okay, but you're still giving the vaccine based on like 5 variants ago, and you haven't pulled the vaccine. But the monoclonal antibodies that actually worked for treatment, you've pulled all of those because you say the variant has changed so much that they don't work. So let me get this straight. You have 2 immune agents, one, this mRNA gene injection, the other one, a monoclonal antibody. They're both based on the same variant, but one doesn't work, but the other one still works. Like, how's that possible? How in the world of common sense does that work? Well, it doesn't, because you named the one vaccine, and vaccines are sacred. Because once something is named a vaccine, there's like this thing in everyone's mind that somehow it cured smallpox, which the smallpox vaccine may not have even cured smallpox, but that's a different story. And then it just becomes this font of holy water.
Sounds like you don't believe in science, Tim.
Yeah, apparently. Not scientism, the worship of.
Kidding. That's the stupid answer. Oh, actually, I believe in science. That makes me so mad.
Well, I mean, yeah, Ignaz Semmelweis, look him up. The first guy that said that maybe after you've done an autopsy and you run down to deliver a baby, you should wash your hands between the autopsy and delivering the baby. That guy, he got thrown into a mental institution and they beat him to death. And that was about 10 to 15 years before germ theory. So he was 10 to 15 years ahead of his time, like way ahead of his time. But he went against the medical orthodoxy in like 1880, 1870, 1880. That's where he ended up, mental institution, where he was beaten to death for washing his freaking hands.
So I gotta ask you guys, like, you guys work in the medical field. You see how this machine works and how it breaks down. How do we fix it? I know it's not easy.
You opt out, right? You opt out, and then you let it burn to the ground. It's the only way. So how do you opt out? You go to a direct primary care physician, where you pay a subscription fee to see somebody that is like-minded. You get disaster insurance because there's still parts of allopathic medicine that are good. Trauma surgery is good. Some ortho's good. Some chemotherapy stuff for blood cancers, that stuff's good. Like there's elements that are really good where you need disaster coverage for. And then you opt out of the day-to-day stuff. You go, I'm not going to take statins and diabetic meds and whatever. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to, all of those things that you should be doing anyways, which also help your mental health vastly. And you got to pull yourself out of the system. That's the only way. This idea that we're going to reform this with new laws or whatever, it just changes the flavor of corruption. That's all it does. Instead of having peach flavored corruption, we have cherry flavored corruption, because we're going to be moving around, trillions of dollars and saying that it's not going to be corrupt anymore. No, the people have to stand up and say, this is bullshit. I'm opting out. I'm taking care of myself. I'm my own best doctor. I'm going to find like-minded individuals. Some of it's going to be quacky and weird and not effective, but we'll figure all that stuff out because it's messy. It's just life. And that's the way it gets fixed. This idea that we're going to do it from the top, or we're going to vote in something that's going to change this, it just changes the corruption into a different flavor.
So do you think Fauci's going to get held accountable for the stuff he's done?
No. I don't see how. Something would have to happen, like all of these extra cancers, like the extra cancer stuff where doctors are coming out now and they're like, we're seeing all these people that are really young that have cancer. If somebody actually nuts up and can prove, which is a huge ask, that there's spike protein in these cancers or something, or there's genetic material from the vaccine that's in these cancers, where you can prove a causal link, where everyone then has a huge change of mind and goes, okay, we were actually screwed with. Someone has to pay. Who's going to pay? I just don't see that. The people that control that data are the ones that control the narrative. So it's going to be really hard. People are going to have to be convinced enough politically that they got effed with, and then they'll demand justice, and then something will happen. And unless there's political will, it just doesn't. I don't see it happening.
I was going to just say, and then I think a lot of people realize, but I never really did, how deep the layers of all of the interconnectedness of these people in government and pharma that run the system are. They're so deeply embedded that the WHO controls everything, is so powerful. It's not going to change because he's so protected. And I guess for me, the turning point was when I read the book, The Real Anthony Fauci by RFK, and saw like what had happened with the HIV era and how some of these guys that were trying to bring forth the data on what was happening in HIV and how they were using these poor guys as guinea pigs with these medications that were clearly killing. And then suddenly they're blackmailed or they're dead or their whole life's work that's, maybe curing cancers is just now shut down and they've disappeared. When I read that and went, whoa, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of power. I know there's a lot of power in government, but in Fauci and all the intertwined and interconnected players, no, I think he's so protected or everybody's going to be so, I don't know. It's like one of those TV shows. What was the movie we watched about the president's?
It's Scandal?
No, I'm thinking of the guy that.
House of Cards.
House of Cards, layers of that. No, you can't get to him. I mean, it'll be like 100 years, some novel will come out and then I don't know.
Well, I mean, you know how this stuff ends. Like, I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but everyone owes everyone. Everyone's indebted. It's not a race to the top. It's a race to the bottom to see whose currency becomes more fiat than the one next door. I mean, if it gets bad enough, what do? They control, alt delete the world, which is war. It's happened twice in the last 125 years. Kingdoms get to a certain area, they need a hard reset. The hard reset is the missiles start flying. And I mean, it's pretty hard to believe we're not really close to that now when you see what's going on in Eastern Europe, which is like the fastest way to kill more Ukrainians is just to keep this war going. But somehow the war keeps going. Like it doesn't make sense to me. It escapes my logic.
Well, and I'm not the smartest guy. I'm not necessarily a historian, but I do look at a lot of the other world wars and stuff, and you see the little tiny things that led up to it, and it sure looks a lot like what's happening right now. And I think the only way you can really tell the future is kind of determine it from, learning the past.
Well, 100%. And
absolutely right.
I've had this conversation with I don't know how many people, and I'm like, it's not 1938. It's 1913, which is way worse. World War I was way, way more preventable and way more of a meat grinder. And then it set the stage because of the Treaty of Versailles and how they treated Germany. It set the stage for World War II. If you wouldn't have had summer 1914, if people would have pulled away from the brink, you wouldn't have had World War I or World War II. And that's what I'm concerned. I'm concerned, I broke my shower glass a couple weeks ago. It's tempered glass. You nick it by 1 millimeter, the whole thing explodes. It's not that it just cracks, it blows up. And I'm scared shitless that we are like pounding and pounding and pounding and pounding. And if Putin is truly a madman that's truly backed into a corner, what's he going to do? He can't be an evil genius and a madman and somebody you can trust to not nuke you. Like, those things don't work. But somehow we're playing this game that he's a nice enough guy that we can keep pounding him and he's not going to retaliate in some insane way. Yet every time you turn on Fox News, it's like he's an insane madman. Well, if he's an insane madman, we're going to get freaking nuked, you dipshits.
Yeah, I mean, you can pull a dog's tail over and over. Sooner or later, it's going to bite you.
There's just no other option.
No, not if you had a helicopter parent. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyways,
that's the problem.
We could like most of our guests, we could talk like all day, all night. It's been awesome.
And I hate how it always spirals into a depression of these things.
Well, but people need to pay attention to this. This geopolitical thing. Don't be worried about bird flu. That's bullshit. Okay. The geopolitics, that's how you're going to wake up one day with, and you're as they said in Terminator 2, you're going to need fucking 1 million sunscreen. I'm much more concerned about 1 million sunscreen than I am bird flu. So tell us about Cooksey Media, where everyone can find you, what you talk about, and it's awesome. I watched some of Chris's stuff. It's just great.
So if you like motocross or supercross, I've got Cooksey Media. And if you follow UFC or MMA, go to Cooksey Media MMA. And if you're buying a house anywhere, hit me up. If you're in the Las Vegas area, I can represent you. And if you're outside, I'll find somebody for you. And use the media platforms I have to help you buy or sell whatever you want as far as real estate market.
Out.
Wonderful.
Standing.
I have to ask him to play along with our fun rapid fire
Yes, let's
segment
do
that
it.
we
This will
haven't
be
done
fun.
in a while. We
Haven't done
didn't
it
warn
in a
you ahead of time, but it's, I guess, usually like it. It's pretty harmless. If you really don't want to answer, just say pass. But we like to
And I
just
have
ask
one
some quick
question
questions.
before we end too. So I'll say I got a rapid fire for you guys afterward.
Perfect.
I love it. I love it. Maybe we should make our guests do that. Anyway, so, okay. What was your favorite motocross track?
Rock Springs, Wyoming. And they don't do this anymore, but they put manure in it. And while it's probably unhealthy and not good, man, that track was fun and held water. It was so good.
We just recorded a segment today on our Doc Tales about parasites in contact lenses in the eye after swimming in crap and contaminated water. I'm thinking that would be the perfect place to have that happen.
Yeah, we grew up in the 80s and 90s. We did dumb stuff, but the track was amazing. So I don't recommend they do it anymore, but it was good.
One book everyone should read.
What's that? Oh, one book? Oh, The Real Anthony Fauci. 100%. Or Rules for Radicals, so you understand what and why they do.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Dream vacation destination.
I'm so boring because I've already been there and I love it. And I love going to Hawaii. Maui is my favorite island.
Yes, me too. Same.
That's me.
Oh, we have to compare. How many times have you been?
Maybe 8.
Have you counted?
No,
Yeah.
but we tried all the islands though. But if I had to guess, I'd say 8.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. One thing you can't live without.
I can't live without. Man, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I don't know. My daughter. As big of a pain in the
All
ass.
right.
I love that little girl.
All right. One more.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Listen, don't talk. And when somebody's talking, listen, don't formulate an answer.
That's a really good one. I love that.
The old 2 ears, 1 mouth thing.
Well, on that note, what have you got for us?
Okay, so I think it's pretty obvious Joe Biden's going to get replaced. Who is going to replace him? I got my thoughts.
Well,
I think
I always thought it was going to be Big Mike.
Mike Pence?
Because Obama's pulling. No, Michelle Obama.
Michelle Obama.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Because Obama's clearly pulling the strings anyway, so I always figured that it would be Michelle. Apparently, she really, really, really doesn't want to do it. So who knows? Ultimately, I think what ends up happening is if he is replaced, which it looks like that's going to be the case, it's going to be Kamala. And the reason it's going to be Kamala is because they have gazillions of dollars in a war chest, and you can't just take that and give it to another campaign. So it would be better off to make a deal with Kamala, make her the top of the ticket, put Newsom in it, and do some switcheroo later. She gets to be the first woman president, and then they boot her out from some medical thing. She gets to be cackler in chief for a couple of weeks or something, and then they'll have gruesome Newsom or somebody in there. That's my theory, because they can't fundraise now. Plus, no one's giving them money. People are jumping ship like crazy. The big donors. So they have to use the war chest they've already accrued. That's my theory.
May?
Oh, I had no theory. I just figured they would sneak in Michelle Obama. But Tim pays much more attention to that.
I thought Obama too. And it's kind of funny, that last debate, if anyone thought that these decisions were all Biden's, he's just the guy they put up there. Clearly.
Oh, that's totally clear. In fact, for years, probably since the beginning of his presidency, we assumed that it was Obama calling the shots, since he still resides in D.C., which is like a precedent.
He's the only president that's ever stayed in D.C. after. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know.
And then there was all the rumors of Michelle wanting to run. So
I don't think she wants it. I think she truly hates politics.
Could be. But I think Obama calls the shots. What was it the other night we heard on TV? Trump was being interviewed, and he said that he made the comment that Hunter Biden is running things. I'm like, no, there's no way. There's no way. I think it behind the scenes is probably Obama.
Yeah, I think so. But I think actually it was either the New York, it might've been Politico. It was one of the more left-leaning, newspapers that said, it's become obvious that, some of our conspiracy brethren are correct. The deep state actually runs the country. And I think that's really true. All the way back to, I remember Gore Vidal, who was a leftist, and he'd get in all these debates with, William F. Buckley, but they were good natured and these guys were intellectual titans. And I mean, he said it was always the National Security Council that ran everything, which now really is the FBI and CIA. It's the deep state that runs it. And they have a kind of a puppet thing, and we'll let you raise taxes and lower taxes and do whatever. But when it really comes to the stuff that really, really matters, like international affairs, that's all run by three-letter agencies and guys that have absolutely no accountability. And I think that's probably almost 100% correct.
Totally agree.
All right. Well, on that happy note, we tried to end on a happy note, and again, after time and again, we failed. So.
Hey, I was absolutely happy. I appreciate you guys having me on. We've been chatting for a long time, and I appreciate you guys. I really appreciate doctors willing to go out and say the things that, a lot of people are calling conspiracy theories, but I appreciate you guys for being on the front line and taking care of it. So thank you guys.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thanks. Yeah. All right. Thanks again, Chris. Hope to have you back soon. Well, that was an absolute blast having Chris on the show. Great idea, Tim, inviting him. And his journey, I think, totally inspiring. And the fact that he was recognizing what was going on and was preemptive is awesome. It's really sad that things aren't changing in motocross, but I don't know, maybe Chris could be that voice for them. So, and I really appreciate him sharing his insights into his therapy and what that was like as much as he did. Any other thoughts?
No, I was really floored. I mean, it's just like, here's a guy that he's like a normal guy that did really cool stuff, and he owns his life. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I wasn't feeling well. There's ways to change this. I'm going to be super proactive. I'm not just going to go and accept defeat. And I mean, that's what's just amazing.
Yeah. So for our listeners, be sure to check out his YouTube channels, Cooksey Media and Cooksey Media MMA, for more of his content. And hey, if you enjoyed today's episode, don't keep it to yourself. Please subscribe to BS Free MD, leave us a review, share this episode with your friends. And you can find us on bsfreemd.com and follow us on social media at bsfreemd. We're everywhere you are. And thanks for tuning in. And of course, without shutting down the show, we have to remember our community shout out, which goes to Nancy Radke. Thanks for tuning in to our last live Doc Tales with Cocktails. And your support means the world to us, Nancy. And I think you are in our neck of the woods now. So thanks for keeping us up to date on that. And we hope you don't overheat. All right, everybody, stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you next time on BS Free MD.
It's no secret that medicine is a bit uptight. That's why Tim and I created BS Free MD, to mix things up a little and have fun in the process. Besides, we are having these exact same discussions all the time, so we thought we might as well invite everyone to the party. If you really like us, you can get plenty more and maybe see one of Tim's cool tattoos on our Instagram or Facebook pages at BS Free MD. See you next time.
While we try to keep BS Free MD as raw and real as possible, we can't be held responsible for any medical decisions or discussions had as a result of what you've heard on the show. We know, bummer. But the truth is, we really do care about your questions. So feel free to reach out to us by email at doc@bsfreemd.com.